time we stopped, we had just started going from the step mode into the spline mode, so getting the in-betweens in Maya. And there's still a lot that isn't in here yet. It's very bland kind of looking. The motion isn't quite right. The arms feel very stiff. The feet feel very stiff. It's not there yet. This is essentially a very first pass going through. I think the last thing we did was we retimed the shot to make it just a little faster than the reference. So at this point, this is usually the point where a lot of students kind of go, well, what do I do next? What's the next thing I do? It's moving. I've got my timing. I've got most of my spacing in there. The characters, there's no big pops or wiggles. We kind of cleaned those out. What do we do next? And at this point, we are starting to go into the refining and polish phase, where we are trying to add that extra little bit of flavor and oomph in there. So when I'm doing something like this, the first thing I'm going to do is first write out all the things that still don't work. Make a checklist. So in this case, for example, it's things like, let me make sure I bring my drawing tools in here, which is this there. So the foot here, you'll notice that it slides on the ground kind of oddly. So I need to fix that. I need to refine that motion right in there. This foot is staying frozen too long. See there how the leg is starting to move, but the foot is perfectly frozen. We need to fix that. We're also getting a kind of weird wiggle in that whole leg here, where it goes back and then forward. That kind of feels a little strange. What else is happening? Well, our breakdowns need to be pushed a little bit more. So if I kind of look at the beginning here, you notice how the head starts to rotate forward as the arm starts to come up at the same time. It almost feels like he's doing this, where it's all coming in together. We want to offset that. So I'll do a list of all of these different things. I'll go through, just analyze what can be improved. The foot here, it kind of hits this line and just stays there, just kind of slides forward and then contacts very softly there. I could probably push my spacing here as well. Let's see. As he comes through, look at my posing as well. This is another thing that I'll go through. Just look at your posing. How can it be improved? So for example, on this pose here, I feel like the pose is just not that interesting. The back is very straight. The leg is kind of almost at a 90-degree bend from it. It's just not that good. So let's see how we can push it. And you can do draw overs. So I can just draw over this here a little bit like that. Maybe I want to push that line of action a little bit more as he's coming up. Let's see if we can push that silhouette. See how the legs are kind of lining up with each other right there. How can we push that and push that silhouette? Maybe that leg, let's come through here. Maybe it's going to be just a little higher and more like this. So I like to go through and just write down a lot of notes. I'll write it down or I'll draw it down. I think the other thing I could do here is as he comes up, pick something to lead. Right now, as he's kind of rotating up this way, it just feels like his whole body's going whoop. And I almost feel like I could drag the body up a little bit more. So round this out just a little bit, but kind of drag the head down a little bit more. So we almost feel the shoulders leading the action here. Okay, what else can be improved? This push off on the toes is not working right now. The toes are sinking into the ground, so that's going to have to be refined. I definitely have to put a facial pose, which I actually did off stream super quick because that's not the point of the demo here. What else? Looking at this at full speed again. There's some knee pops at the end, some knee pops and wiggles right there. there's something going on with the spine somewhere in here, so I'll have to look that up, right in that region there. So you go through, analyze the shot, and be very meticulous. Write down as many notes as you can. Sometimes when I'm doing shots like this, I would get like a page of 40 plus notes. And with all of that said, there's also the question of what happens if you don't know what notes to put. Maybe you're still learning and you're not sure what you need to put in. Should the foot go one way or the other? What's feeling not right? In those cases, the best thing to do is study your reference, do master studies of other shots. So if I'm not sure, like, how can I push this to that next level? Find a shot from another cartoon where a character is running and look at how they improve things. What did they do to make that shot look so good? And then see if you're doing the same things, or if you could try putting those same things in. These tests are ways for you to experiment. So learn from others, see if you can throw those elements into what you're doing here. The other thing you can do, like right here, this 90-degree bend I'm not a fan of. The other thing you can do is ask for feedback. Asking for feedback is huge as an animator and as an artist. We want to make sure we are getting feedback and understanding what other people think of the shot. Do they think it's too slow, too fast? Do they think it's appealing or not? And that is a huge, huge part of any animator's career. Now, this can be tricky if you're not in a school environment, but there are communities online that you can go to. There's the Prep Bros Discord, there's the Sir Wade Discord, there's the Animation Nation Discord, there's a bunch of different forums, there's Agora community. There's all sorts of ways of getting good quality feedback nowadays, which is really nice. When I first started, if you weren't in a school, there was really no place for you to go and just go, hey, can someone take a look at my work? And get some nice, good quality feedback. So we take a bunch of notes here and be picky. See if you can really dissect what's going on. So one thing I'm noticing here is this elbow kind of pops right there. Let's turn on our spacing. You can see how it suddenly just launches forward. I think I add a little drag right there. Okay, so we take a whole bunch of notes. Now, don't just take notes from your shot camera. Also look at your shot from different angles and see if anything stands out here. If I look at it from the front view, let's actually turn off the curves. One thing I'm noticing is right here, this change of direction isn't quite working. He is tilting his head and his body almost too soon and too evenly. As he's turning out, I really want to get that feeling of the lean and the kind of that swoop in to the motion. And right now he's just kind of tilting and sliding over. So that part I feel like I need to break down a little bit more right in here. As he goes through, there's kind of a wiggle right here. So that's definitely odd. And I can see it happening because of the hips. That rotate Y of the hips is stretching out really quick and then reversing right away. And that feels a little weird. So we've got that weight shift in there that feels a little off. Okay, so the big thing is the turn and then that motion right through here. Okay, now I'm not going to do this here because it's going to take some time. If I knew this is the stream we were going to do, I would have prepped this ahead of time. But the next thing I would do is write down all of those notes and then number them. Write down which ones you want to address in which order. So, for example, you do the foot first. Okay, I would put that number 1. And then maybe the angle here, number 2. So you take all of your notes and you number them in the order you want to address them. This is very important because the last thing we want to do is work in a way that requires us to redo work. So for example, let's say I adjust my spacing on the arm right through here. I do that first thing. Well, okay, great, I adjusted the spacing. But then I fix my spine at the beginning and at the end here, which we were talking about from the front view. Both of those might destroy or might alter the spacing of the arm. So all the work that I did on the spacing of the arm there will need to be redone because I redid my spine. So I want to make sure I address my notes in a way that I'm always pushing forward and not erasing any work on other elements. So usually this is starting with the hips, starting with the feet, the spine, and work your way out on the character. And you never know. Sometimes when you fix, let's say, the hips, it'll fix an issue with the head that you were wanting to fix before. And then, hey, 2 birds, 1 stone, which is really nice. So we just write down as many notes. And once again, if you're not sure what notes to write down, you do master studies, you study your reference, and you ask for feedback. That's the best way to learn. If you're just sitting there going, well, I'll just try this. You could potentially stumble onto something good and learn from that. More often than not, it's just moving things randomly and hoping for the best. So we want to study. We want to be very active in our learning here. Now, let's see, there was a question here. As an animator, how would you build your own rig? I want to add layers like passes. Like layer 1 will have only the controllers you need for blocking or fast body mechanics movement. Layer 2 will have bendy controllers, fingers and toes. Let's see. So do you mean just how would I approach it? I would approach it probably in the same way that you were talking there. And this is how this rig is built as well. So on this rig, there are bendy controls and extra polish controls that are hidden within here. So I can turn on a whole bunch of extra controls there. I can turn on toe controls. Even the spine has extra spine controls in here. The facial controls can be turned on and off. So I can just do that and not have to worry about the face. I like to have things in layers like that because it makes it so that as I'm blocking a shot, I don't have 600 controls that I'm looking at and trying to select just the one that I want. I can just do the body mechanics super quick and easy. And then when I'm doing the face, I can turn those on and then focus on the face. So I would approach it in that way. I would also personally put the controls hidden within the areas that are associated with them. So what I mean by that is the facial controls are on the head. The arm bend bows are on the arm control. This way you don't have one master control that's just got all of these extra settings that you have to dig through. For the face extra stuff, you go to the face. For the hands, you go to the hands. That's the way I'm used to it. I have seen rigs where you go to, usually it's going to be like an extra control on the bottom here, like a root control. And you select that, it would be a secondary root control, and it would have just a list of all the different things, usually categorized. So you have arms, head, legs, and you can turn things on there. That's not bad in any way. I don't dislike that. I'm just used to having all the extras within the areas that they help with. But either is good. As long as it's organized, that's the big thing. And Najim, my training is over today. From Monday, I will work on an upcoming feature film. Congrats, that's awesome. So excited, my first ever professional job. That's amazing, congrats. Oh, that's huge. You definitely earned it. I know you've been working hard on a lot of different things, so congrats on that. Let's see, just catching up here. And knee angle might be a bit sharp. Yeah, there's definitely some knee angles that are way too sharp in this shot. So let's go through here. And I'm not going to try to polish this up. This is not going to be the goal of this stream. Mostly because I haven't prepped anything and I would want to make a list, but I'm just going to show how I address certain things. So one of the first things that I do want to address is how the character leads the action here. I feel like my breakdowns just aren't really working right through here. So let's see how I can improve that. Now, as I'm going through, before I start scrubbing right through here, what I'm going to do is just look at my key poses and see if there's anything that's not working in the keys themselves, the pose that I already have. And part of it here, right at the beginning, we were talking about how the arm and head kind of feel tied together. I think I can delay the body a little bit here. So let's go forward here and just bring that body back a little. This is where the graph editor is going to be very handy. When you're dealing with minor motions like this, it's nice to jump into the graph editor and be able to tweak a few things. So I want the body to basically stay still right there, then ease out, but I still want a little bit of a lean. See how right now, ooh, too close. Right now, as he goes through, he's kind of sliding backwards. That's because he's moving towards camera, and it's creating this illusion of him actually moving backwards. I don't want that. I just want a forward lean to the character. So what I'm going to do here is just adjust the rotations on the hips here. Let's look at our rotate Z. I feel like that's kind of kicking up a little too much right here. So let's just adjust that a little bit. That already helps. He's not going back quite as much. And then let's take our rotate X and increase that for the hips. So now very slightly, if I look at his nose, you can see that it moves forward just a tiny bit. I could probably push it up just a little bit more. Yeah, just let's push that a little bit more. I wonder if I could push it with the neck. No, let's do the spine. So grab my rotate X here, and I'm just going to nudge it a tiny bit so we feel that forward momentum right in there. So just trying to push that lead and follow through there. Okay. So now we feel that arm start to move, and then the body goes through. Now, as we go through here, again, looking at the front view, one thing I'm not a fan of is how the head kind of just stays very flat. So I'm going to try and push a little bit more of an angle in that head as it goes through. And then that way we feel that change as he changes direction here. I should put this back into object mode. That's going to help. At this point, I almost feel like we should get a little bit more of a bend. I want his head to lead the action here. Whereas he goes through, he's almost tilting his head to push forward and through. Okay, this is going to be one of the first areas that the posing kind of feels a little bleh. So we're going to have to push that quite a bit too when we get to it. Okay. So we're starting to get into that. It's nice because we're starting to feel a little tilt in the head on the shot camera as well, which is really nice. So he comes through. I almost feel... Let's see. Let me scrub through here. Yeah, the body feels like it's leading too much here. Let me go through here. So rotate Z. I'm trying to think, how do I want the character to swing their body over? Thinking of that mechanic in there, those mechanics. So right here, I think I could just delay this a little bit. Let's clean this up just a bit. So he tilts over. Let's keep tilting over to the side here. Tilt over. And then as he goes through, hold that a little bit more and then swing over quicker right through here. Now, just as another note, let me actually undo this just to kind of show another very useful tool when you're doing things like this, which is the buffer curves. So just take all of your curves here and then hit this button in the graph editor. This is your buffer curves. And you just want to make sure you select the curves. That'll help. Select the curves, buffer them, and then just go to view and then make sure show buffer curves is turned on. What this is going to do is save a snapshot of your curves, which is essentially a super undo button. So now if I select spine controls and move them, you'll see we can see where the spine was before. That is a huge help because we can actually see what we were doing. And also, let's say I make some big changes and oops, I just screwed something up. I can always just select this and then swap back to the old curve and rebuffer it. And now I can start back right from where I was, and I don't have to undo and hope for the best or try to rebuild what I had. It makes it much easier. So I want to push this where he comes through and swings over. Okay. I think that's feeling better already. It's just a small change, but it's exaggerating that ease right through there. And I didn't select everything here for some reason. There we go. Now, you can see my spine controls are a little offset. Is that an issue? Not really. But if I wanted to, I can bring these a little closer together. And David, hey, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. I think I can also, let's get rid of that ease there. Okay. It's over. Change direction. I wonder if, let me just test something. Let's try to bring this over a little faster here. No. So the thing that I'm seeing here as I did that is now the character is throwing themselves out of balance. They're swinging too far screen right before that foot has touched the ground. And then the worst part is that it's not lining up with their hip motion. Their hips only really move to the side here on frame 14. So if they rotate over and essentially stop by frame 11, that's 3 frames where they just kind of hold and then slide over. That doesn't feel like it's working together. I want these two motions to feel like they are connected. Like he starts to tilt and that's what moves his hips over to the side. Let's actually take a look at our hip motion side to side. So that's our translate X right here. So yeah, you can see frame 14 is where he really starts that motion. And I think wonder if I can push it just a little bit more. Yeah, something like that. So I want to tie these together. Have the head lead. The head starts to tilt. Then the body goes. Then the hips move over. Okay. Now we can even build this in a little bit more by having the twist of the body. So as I'm thinking about this, I like to think about all three rotations. The X, so forward, and this depends on the rig. So in this case, the X is that forward twist. Z is the side to side, which we were tweaking, and the Y is the twist this way. So as I'm moving a character, I don't want the character to just bend forward, bend back, bend to the side. I want to layer those in. So as he leads here, if I was to run and I'm going to change directions, I might lead with that shoulder as well as I'm doing that motion. So as he's coming through here, maybe I can push that rotate a little bit more this way. We'll see. So he comes through. Right now, you can see there's not much rotate Y. It's not really doing anything at all. So we can see how we can build that in. So maybe around here, we get a little bit more of that shoulder coming down. And then pushing through. With that arm coming through. Something like that. Let's see how that feels. Now he starts moving. I think I could maybe, let's keep that going a little bit more this way. And this is, again, where the buffer curve comes in handy. You can see what was happening before. So we get this motion here where we feel that shoulder tilt forward a little earlier. And if you want, you can always just swap back and forth, see if you actually did a change. If I swap, you can see how that changes the pose quite a bit there. So we feel that tilt of the body coming through there. Let's ease that in a little bit more. And then I still have that fast motion here. So I'm looking at the graph editor. Where are my motions moving the fastest? When are they the slowest? We can see it eases out a little faster, really fast right there. Well, I'm trying to coincide that with when the arm swings through. As the arm swings through, I want that weight of the arm to kind of pull the whole body forward there. Now, I could try to change it like this. Let's just see how that feels. So now it's going to coincide with when the upper arm swings instead of the lower arm. And that actually feels pretty good. If you look at it from the front, see how that arm motion now ties in with the body rotation? It's almost like the arm is dragging that body forward. We're creating this connected feeling to the motion. Instead of everything feeling kind of separate and disconnected, I'm trying to think of sympathetic motions. How can I build things together, layer animation in with each other? So let's see how that feels here. Yeah, definitely better. Not quite in place. I feel like the rotate Z here is still a little weird. And I think part of it is I'm not getting an offset between the hips and the spine. It kind of feels like the whole bodies are going eep, versus the hips leading and then the spine whipping over. So I'm going to go in here and just see what I can do. Now, a lot of this is essentially just thinking of your basic mechanics. Think back to the first assignments that you did, pendulum assignments, ball bounce assignments, things like that. Essentially, what I'm trying to do here is I'm thinking of the spine as a upside down pendulum. So you've got that and then the head. So upside down pendulum. And I want the hips to rotate first, which would drag this over, cause the spine to bend over this way before whipping across and then following through. So I want that nice whipping action right there. So how would I get that to work? How would I break that down? So let's see what we can do here. The hips come through. They start to lead right here. Wonder if I could almost hold them back a little. No. So as the hips lift up here, one thing I'm kind of noticing, and this is going to affect the spine quite a bit, so I have to be careful, is as the hips lift, I'm not really getting a reaction in the hips here. So that leg is lifting, but the hips do nothing, which makes the character feel a little stiff. I'm going to try and push the hips up a little bit. So now as that leg lifts, we get a little reaction in the hip there. And then it's going to ease out a little bit more before leading the action. But then even here, I wonder if, I'm going to just try this here. I'm going to hold the hips back a little bit more right through here. See how that feels. That feels a little bit better. But let's see if I do it the other way. Let's lead the hips really quickly here. Let's just drop them. But then the spine, we're just going to drag back a little bit more. So I'm watching that connection between the hips and the spine. I think I like the other way more. Let me just try this. And exaggerate it a little bit. This is something I always like to do, is if I'm not sure about something, exaggerate it. That knee pop is bugging my eyes. Yeah, the knee pop is awful. Right there. Whoop. So I could go through here. And actually, I kind of like that. So I'm actually leading with the chest a little bit more. But that's not bad. I actually kind of like that. Now, one thing I do feel right here is as he presses down, the hip isn't reacting to the weight of the character. So I almost feel like right here, I could take the hips and drag them down a little bit faster right here. We almost get that drop in the hips right there. Nice big weight shift in there before the hips come up. And then, yeah, start to come up through here. Just looking at this pose is terrible. So bad. This is going to be, the posing pass is one of my favorite passes in animation, when you start to really push your poses. And the reason for that is it's where you start going away from copying your reference and making something really appealing and interesting. Now, a lot of people tend to do the posing pass as you block out your shot. This was a body mechanics exercise, so we followed the reference pretty closely, and now we're going to try and push it to see how we can improve it and then compare. I'm just looking at the hips here, trying to get that feeling of weight in there. We get that drop and then the raise. That feels better. Feel like the translate X of the hips is a little off right here. Still. Comes over, through. It might just be that knee pop that's horrible knee pop that's causing issues. But I almost feel like the translation is a little late. I'm just going to try bring this up here. What's the hotkey in the graph editor for graph ghosting? There's no hotkey. You could set up a hotkey if you want, but it's this button right here. Now, actually, is there a hotkey? If you go to curves, it's the buffer curve right here. Snapshot. Yeah, there's no hotkey. So you can just create a hotkey for that if you wanted to. Personally, I use it a lot, but I don't. Once you use it once, you don't have to reuse it that often. So I don't really need a hotkey for it. A hotkey, it would seem a little, there's a lot of different tools that I use a lot more that I would want a hotkey for. Okay, that feels better. It feels like the weight is starting to shift a little sooner to the side. Maybe a little too soon right here. There we go. Oh, the link to the reference, it's from Motion Inc. If you just do a search for Motion Inc. on YouTube, you're going to find the channel. It's really good. It's just a channel filled with body mechanics things like flips, swords, sword attacks, runs, jumps, all sorts of things. It's a great site for studying and learning body mechanics. Okay. That's feeling a little better. Let me actually, I want to clean up that hip or that knee pop right there. So I'm just going to very quickly stretch out the leg right here. So what's happening? Yeah, the foot's sliding forward weirdly right there. That would do it. Let's just make sure my translations here stay still. So something accidentally got dragged right there for some reason. Yeah, they are really good references. Oh, I know why it's sliding. That's why. It's because I did a twist on the foot. So I just have to refine that motion. See? Essentially, when you have slides like this, it's actually not a bad thing to have. Just make sure the foot slides backwards. If the foot slides forwards, then you've got an issue. Now, there's other ways I could fix this, but I'm just trying to do this roughly here. So we get that little bit of a slide in the foot as he takes a step. And it slides a little bit forward right here, so. Something like that. I personally like to build in slides and little slips in the foot, little extra rotations. I feel it makes shots look much more dynamic than just having the foot stay perfectly in position the whole time. The other thing I can do from popping the leg there is just take my translate Y. I'm just going to raise it up globally. Hey, Jupit. Oh, hey, Jupit. How's it going? Thank you so much. Oh, it's great to see you again. Hope you're doing well. And thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate it. So I just stretched out that leg ever so slightly. And now you can see it stays straight the whole time. It's not so much that the leg looks like it's twice this length. But we get that nice pivot in there. And no pops. I've got a little bit of a wiggle right in here that I could tweak a little bit, but aside from that, I just need to clean up the ease right there. Sometimes knee pops are really nice and easy to fix. Other times they're a nightmare and just awful. Okay. Let's see. Let's take a look at the forward translation of this foot here. Actually, let's not focus on the foot too much right now. I want to focus on the bigger actions. And again, this is where I'm not doing it here because of time constraints, because I don't have actually too much time today to stream, so I want to get as much done as possible. But I would make sure, if I was doing this on a production, to write down what it is I have to fix and number them so that I'm not jumping back and forth. One of the worst things you can do when you're fixing things like this is to just bounce between different things. So for example, we were fixing the spine, then we jumped to the hips, and then we're fixing a little rotation in the hips, and we're kind of deviating from the original thing, which was make sure the spine is working. And then we went to the foot, and if we weren't careful, we could easily just derail, and now we're fixing something completely different, and we never actually finalized the spine right through here. So be very careful as you're doing stuff like this that you do it in a controlled way, and it's going to help you avoid these just random, like, fix a little here, fix a little there, fix a little here, fix a little there, and never actually fix anything. You want to get things done and then move on. See, what kind of onion skin or motion path tool do you have use? The one I use most often is the grease pencil tool. I'll just mark out the path. Now, I don't actually use the Maya grease pencil tool. I use the Blue Pencil plugin, which is a paid plugin, but it's a really good drawing tool that you can draw over top of your shot. So let me actually bring that in here. It's also got layers, which is really cool. So if I wanted to track my spacing, let's say for the nose, I could zoom in here and just track the nose right there. Like that. And that gets me my arc. Now, the reason I like this personally is it allows me to draw out the arc better myself. So for example, I feel like the nose here from frame 1 to 3 isn't moving. So instead of using an arc tracker and then trying to put it into position, I can just go in here. I don't want the nose to be there. I want it to be here, let's say. So it's moving forward slightly. Well, from there, I know that that's the exact arc I want. I can just tilt the character forward. There. Now I know that I'm getting the exact arc. So that's personally what I love. I like to be able to just go, I want this, and then put it there, versus seeing the messed up arc and then, okay, I need to refine this, and you are hoping to get the result in the end and working towards it. I just want to see the result and then put it there. Now, with that said, a few others is the Maya default. I'll use this if I have to, and honestly, it's not bad. It's just a little slow. So the default arc tracker is under the visualize menu here, create editable motion trails. I can use that, and here's the motion trail. You can see it's a little wobbly, so I'm definitely going to fix that. Right there, something definitely is happening oddly there. The problem with this is it's a little slow, and you should only really have one or two of them, or else everything is going to be super delayed. A good alternative to this is Animbot's motion trail, or Anim Tools Anim Trail. Those are really good. It's very similar, just a lot faster. I don't have Animbot running right now. I could turn it on if I wanted to, but a lot of times for these demos, I like to show what you can do without any like complicated plugins or things that will, how to put it? I want to show you what you can do with the base Maya so that everyone can do it without having to buy a plugin. The other day I freehanded a trail in Blender's Grease Pencil, then imported it into Maya to use as reference on dog animation. Turned out way better than anything I've done before. Nice. That's awesome. I used to love automatic motion trails. That's my go-to. I would always just use the motion trails or use the anim trails. But when I started getting more comfortable using the Grease Pencil tool and drawing out my trails, I really found it improved my work, because I was just putting things exactly where I wanted, getting the spacing I wanted, and not fighting to get Maya to do the spacing and hoping for the best. Because more often than not, you tend to fall into the habit of going, okay, this is what Maya gave me, let's make that work. And it makes things feel less interesting. See, is it good to change the arch from the motion trail? Oh, so you mean edit the motion trail itself? I never do that. It's not a bad thing, but for more complex rigs, I haven't had good results with it, and I just like being in control. And when you're doing something like that, you're letting Maya determine what rotations are going to be used, or sorry, what translations. The other thing is it only works with translations. It doesn't work with rotations. If I'm tracking the head, I can't adjust the points because I want to adjust the rotation of other elements, not the head. So I very rarely use that. If a character goes from point A to point B in a scene, where do you draw the line between making a cycle for the shot or animating the walk run per step? How much does the character deviate from the cycle before you say it's not worth having a cycle here? Might as well do it from scratch. It depends on how long it is. So if something like this, because it's like 2 or 3 steps, I don't need to use a cycle. It also depends on what's happening in the shot. So if the character is supposed to walk down the street and they're supposed to be bumping people, like maybe it's a busy street and they're getting bumped and like just knocked over all the time, there's going to be so many elements that have to be kind of custom made for it that adding a cycle is going to be more work than it's worth, because I am changing so much. If it's just going to be a cycle with the occasional character doing a small thing, then a cycle is much easier, and you can just add an animation layer over top, make a few changes in there. So there's no kind of like global rule, but it's usually the length of the shot and the complexity. If it's a very short shot and it's just a cycle, I'll just use that. But if it's a short shot and I want some kind of something unique to it, I'll probably just try to block it in myself super quickly. Now, again, the other factor is how much time do you have to animate it? If I have a day to animate a shot, even if it's a short one, I might just throw in a cycle and get as much as I can changed, and whatever I can't, it stays the same. That way I just focus on the main acting bits and I'm not having to deal with like foot motions and stuff like that. So yeah, those three things. My time, how much time I have to animate the shot, how complex of a motion it is, and then how long the shot is. The length of the shot is kind of less important as the complexity of the motion. Let's see, one difference I also like with the drawing versus motion trail is that you can track edges instead of just the location of the joint. Yeah, exactly. You can track anything without having to put a locator or something like that in place. So a good example here, just of an area where I would use the motion trail, is the foot right through here. So let's actually, since we're talking about that, I'm just going to get that foot into position here. Let's see. Okay, it lands right there. I want to get this kind of framed up nicely. So let's bring back our toolbox and our layers. I'm going to get rid of this layer. One thing I love about Blue Pencil is the fact that it has layers. It makes it so much easier. So I'm going to track the heel right here. And I'm going to go, let's just go every 2 frames. That way we're not getting too many points. Oops. Yeah, that's definitely going to have to be fixed. So we look at this. Well, this is the trail that we currently have. We can try to push this to be more dynamic. So one thing that I'm feeling right now is that it's going backwards here. We don't want that. It shouldn't be going backwards as that foot steps up. It should be going forwards. So that's a little high. Let's move this closer here. So let's ease that, but let's have it move forward there just a little bit. Now, as it comes through, I feel like the motion here is a little like even. It pops up and then goes there. So I can do 2 things. I can ease this in just a little bit. So now we get that big spacing change. And then let's actually move this forward and a little faster here. Kind of get a little bit more of an arc through there. Okay. Now that means this is going to have to be pushed up a little bit and a little faster. So maybe somewhere around there. And now as it comes through, we're getting this linear line right through. That's not interesting. So let's push this arc. And there's another way you can do this, is just change your color and then just draw the new arc in a new color. So I want this to maybe be, let's see, it's going up, around. Let's raise this up a little bit here. And this is the contact. So this is gonna have to be right there. So how do I push this? Well, typically for a run, your foot will... Let's see, for something like this, his foot could ease in, or it could hit a little harder. So what I'm trying to think of is the spacing from this point to this point. Do I want this right in the middle? Boring. Or do I want it to kind of ease out and then really hit hard? Or do I want to ease it in slightly so that it feels like he's taking a more careful step? I think in this case, I want to push it so that it hits a little harder. So we get that kind of quick slap of the foot and then it takes the step. So let's kind of raise this up right here and push it back a little bit. So now we're getting that bigger arc. Instead of going straight, we are rounding it right through there. I could even push this up a little higher if I wanted to. So we've got all of that. Let me just clean things up a little bit here. So I drew out my new arc. Now I can just go to my foot and try to get that in there. So at the beginning here, the foot comes up, and let me double check something. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of rotations in here before the foot even lifts off the ground. So I'm going to go to my key. Where does the foot lift off? Right there. So right here, there should be no rotations. The foot should be on the ground. Let's copy over the translations. Make sure it's not slipping. So from here, copy over all of them. Get rid of that. And now on this frame, we'll just use a little foot roll. Beep. And my arc isn't quite where I drew it, but I can still get my spacing. And that's just me not being accurate. But the nice thing is I can always adjust. So, okay, now we're gonna put that here, which means that I think my arc here should be a little, maybe that's too high, right around there. A little further back. Now let me actually read the chat here before we go too far. I'm thinking you could do a demo or share some tips and principles on character intersection, like punch each other, hitting each other, how the body reacts. Oh yeah, that would be a lot of fun. I talk about it a lot, like just in terms of demoing it. It would be fun to do an actual punch animation. That would be actually really cool. Even if we just did like a torso shot and have someone get hit in the face, we can show like how we can push that. I like this idea. When it comes to something like a tail, do production houses opt to using like something like dynamic splines so there's no need to wag a tail back and forth endlessly? It depends on the production, honestly. Bigger productions will usually have some sort of tool that you can use, which is really nice. But smaller productions, you're just gonna have to hand animate it. So there's no kind of global tool, unfortunately. It really just depends. In most cases, it is nice to have some sort of tool just because it makes your life a lot easier and you're not having to fight Maya and all of that stuff. If you're looking for a good tool just in general, there's one called Overlapper. It's paid, but it's really nice. And I'm getting a little bit of a knee pop here, so I'm going to bring that foot down a little bit. I want to get that slight ease right here. To avoid the pop, I want a little bit of a bend in that knee and then go forward. There we go. So Overlapper is really good for something like that. And A to J, always with the links. It's amazing. We need to set up a Patreon just for A to the J. So up here, let's move this up there. Move it back here. And then here, I'm using foot roll, but because of the way I'm animating the foot roll, I'm getting this weird connection. So I'm just going to take that and I'm going to slide it back here. So we get that little bit of a contact. This is something I love to do with contacts, is have the thing hit and then slide a little bit. Just there. And then I can add a little rotation in there to add even more. Oh, that question reminds me. I've been wanting to animate a dragon model, but it's a long snaking FK chain of bones. It made me realize I have no idea how people would animate those long Chinese dragons or snakes. Would they have IK controls along their body or following a motion path? I feel like the latter might be limiting despite being more common. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. It depends on the studio and what you're doing. So sometimes it's a full IK chain and you're just animating the whole body manually. That's really nice because you have full control and you can just get exact poses you want. This is really cool when you want the thing to snake around like objects and whatnot. You can get perfect poses. The problem is it's very manual, which means you have to do a lot of the work yourself. Now, the other way you can do it is with something like a motion path or a motion trail. You basically lock the dragon onto a trail, or at least the body, and it just follows that. The problem with that is it tends to be more limiting because certain parts of the body can't get exaggerated. Everything kind of follows. You can think of it like putting a car on a roller coaster, or like the cars that go on a roller coaster. They're all linked one behind the other and they follow the roller coaster exactly. No car differentiates, hopefully, or else you're going to derail and something horrible will happen. So everything follows along, which is nice. You get that nice smooth motion. You can get arcs and spirals, all of that good stuff, but it can feel limited and you kind of feel that track motion. The other way is with procedural animation. So this is using a plugin to create the overlap for you or to build in the kind of motion. So what essentially you would do is you'd animate the head going through the motions and doing everything. And then you take the other controls, run a plugin, and it'll basically overlap the body and have it follow and drag behind the head. It kind of captures a little bit of the motion path element, but also gives a little bit more creativity in it because it's more physics based versus just following a specific path. Now that's really cool. The problem is because it's procedural, you're going to miss out on like getting exact poses. You're just going to get what the computer gets. So a lot of times you mix the two. You have like specific controls that you'll use: the head, the body with the arms, the back legs, and the hips with the legs, and then the middle parts might be procedurally done. So you just kind of hit those points, have 3 controls, and then the whole tail or even the middle part can be kind of figured out by the computer. But it really depends on the production though. So everyone's a little different. In most cases, if I was doing something like that, I would either want an IK setup or some sort of overlapping plugin. Okay. So we got the foot into position here. A CV curve. So a CV curve would be a motion path. So you create your CV path, your CV or EP curve tool. Either one, they're going to do the same thing. So if you go to curve tools, CV curve, EP curve, it's just the way you create the curve. You could create any of these, honestly. And then you attach the creature to the path and it creates a motion path. We talked about this before in one of the streams of having a walk cycle and locking it onto a curve, so you can essentially just have a character walk along a path, which is really cool. But like I said, the main issue is that you're locking it on and then it's following like a roller coaster. Now, if you are going to do something like that, what you can do is take the dragon, let's say, put it on a motion path. It follows along perfectly. Then bake out the dragon's animation so that it no longer follows the path and is instead keyframed. And from there, you can exaggerate your animation. It basically gives you a base to work it through. Yeah, exactly. Bake it. So in that case, it would work, but it depends. Sometimes that can be even more work because now you're trying to push things and you push one part in the middle and the whole tail end breaks anyway. So it really depends on the rig and how it's set up. Unfortunately, there's no universal, like, oh, just do this and it'll be easy. Animation layers can also be used, which that's a really fun way of doing it. Just a little trickier sometimes. So let's get rid of my extra keys in here that are causing some issues. And let's look at my curve here. So it's coming up, comes down, hits a little harder right there. Perfect. So our spacing is much more of an arc now. And we essentially just followed the points that we had done, hit that. Now I can refine my curve just a little bit. So these points are not the final. Like I can always push this. I just want to push my spacing a little bit more. Push the arc just a little bit more. Make it slightly more interesting. Look at it from the front because I'm only tracking it from the side view and we're getting like a major pop right there. So definitely ease that out there. And let's keep that. So we lift off. No, let's ease that out just a little bit more. Something more like that. No, too much. The foot pushes off very quickly, so that's where you're going to get a lot of the sideways motion. And I'll refine the rotation of the foot a little bit in just a second. But we get something like that. Now, let's actually adjust our rotate Z. And actually, am I using foot roll the whole time? No wonder it sucks. No, never mind. Okay. Oh, rotate X. I was looking at the wrong rotation. That would do it. That would do it. Question. Are we going to continue these kind of body mechanics lectures because I'm loving it? If people like it, I'd be happy to do different lectures and we can kind of analyze and learn, for example, how to do a punch, like we were mentioning before. And we'll just do a quick animation. It's not going to be more about the polish side, but just kind of how do we approach certain scenarios. So yeah, if people like it, I'd be happy to do it. Let's see. Do you optimize the baked keyframes with an Euler filter or something? It depends. Oftentimes I don't, but it's sometimes smart to do an Euler filter just to make sure you don't have any 360-degree flips. Oftentimes what I'll do is I'll just optimize the curve so that you don't have too many keys in there, because if you're baking, unless you're using a smart bake, you're just gonna have way too many keys. So it's good to remove any extras you don't need. So let's go over some of the foot stuff here. The foot right now is rotating too soon. See how it kind of flattens out right here, and then it just kind of going. It's almost like he's trying to hit the brakes. His foot's just angled up and going straight down. I really don't like that. The feet tend to have a nice big flip, and normally when we walk, our foot swoops the ground. It kicks through and swoops through. Now in this case, he's not doing a normal step. He's taking this big stomping step. But even if he's doing that, I can still push that foot to drag a little bit more right through here. And what that's going to do is help push the line of action. So now that foot has a better flow to it right through here. And then it's going to make that impact feel more interesting, because instead of just the foot moving kind of in a linear line, just straight down, we get this extra motion. So even though the spacing of the heel is linear, we feel a little bit more of a dynamic change in here. Now I'm actually gonna put in a key here, just drag that a little bit more. And let's actually change this key. I'm not a fan of how high that is right here before it contacts. I want it to be a little higher, but then up. Okay, a little too much drag here. There we go. Now, there's still a little pop right here. And the pop is happening from the toes. See how they just shoot forward? So what I need to do here is I have two choices. I can ease that foot out. So essentially, let me put it this way. We're thinking of how does the foot push off the ground? Is it pushing off and using the toes to really push, and then flick off the ground? In which case, the toes will ease out and the heel will lead the action. So the heel leads, then the toes go. Or are we pushing off where the foot is lifting off and then it starts to slide forward as it goes up? So it slides and then goes. This is like if you're just sitting at your desk, you can take your foot, slide it forward, and just kind of do like that. If we shift our weight enough on one leg, we can do that even when we're standing. We don't have to do the full walking, pushing off. It's not like he's trying to push his weight forward with this leg, he's just moving his foot. So, because of that, all I need to do is take this foot position right here and move it forward so that as he starts to lift his foot here, we're just getting that little bit of an ease in that motion. Maybe a little bit more. And there you go. Now it doesn't pop. We've shown that shown to the audience that the foot is starting to slide before we move it forward, instead of just being stationary and then boop, popping forward. Now the other thing I could do to help improve this foot motion is shorten the amount of time. So what's happening right now is that foot takes a long time to move, and what that creates is it creates a lot of linear motion. So what I could do is try to push that foot to contact, let's say 2 frames sooner, and see how that feels. So I'm just going to take all of the foot motion here up until where it holds right there. This is the nice thing with foot motion, is it's usually very easy to retime. And just doop, move that, and then move that. Now, it's going to mess things up quite a bit. So how does that feel? It definitely feels like he takes the weight a lot better. Let's only do 1 frame. See how that feels. Yeah. I still feel... Essentially what I'm looking at is how the hips and the foot, it almost feels like they're tied together and they're just doing this. I want the foot to lead and then the hip to come down. And that'll help to create that kind of lead and then follow. Now this is pushing away from our reference, but you can see here how now the foot comes down a little faster than the hip, and then the hip comes through. So let's kind of stick with that for now. And at this point, all I need to do is a little bit of curve tweaking. Make sure I don't get any weird spacing pops and whatnot. So like right here. Let's just double check that. Maybe push that up just a little higher. Okay, my rotate X. I almost feel like I could... I almost want to hold it back a little longer. I don't know. Let's actually lead it a little bit more. Just a little bit. Okay. There's a little slide backwards on that foot. I'm gonna have to clean that up in just a second, but not too bad. And now let's actually take a look at my translate Z. There's a little bit of a speed up right here. See how it goes faster and then it slows down? Let's just simplify this. Sometimes it's nice just to delete some extra keys and then whoop, simplify your curve. I want a nice fast and he's stomping the ground. So it should go a little faster right at the end. So if I do this, we get that nice fast motion right through there. Lift, stomp. Now I'm just looking at my spacing. I feel like right here I'm getting a pop in my spacing, which I am right there. Let's push that back a little bit. And let's look at my foot roll because that's gonna cause some issues. Yeah, for now this is good. It's not perfect. There's definitely a knee pop in there that I need to fix. But now we get the nice offset between the body and the foot. And we get that little bit of a stretch before the leg takes the weight. Let's see. Now let's actually look at it from the front. Yeah, that works. At least for now. I definitely need to rotate and drag the foot here. So a little bit of rotate Y. So you can do this with an arc tracker, all sorts of things. Essentially, I just want to make sure the toes drag back here as he steps. And we get that extra nice little bit of motion through there. Try not to sneeze. So we can just ease that in a little bit. Get the nice drag. Go through and on the contact, right around here. Let's just clean up that curve so we get that nice, simple overlap right through there. There we go. Now another thing that we can do to push the contact specifically in this case is not just have it contact flat. Instead, you can use your side-to-side rotation and have it contact on the outer edge of the foot. This is really nice because this is how we actually contact our foot. We don't contact it perfectly flat and then down. We usually contact on the outer edge of the foot. And then we push off on the big toe. Now in this case, because the character's not really pushing off, he's sliding his foot forward, I don't have to worry about that. But if I do this, it's just gonna give that extra axis of motion in here and also allow me to add a little bit of rotate Z to the foot as it goes through here and just add a doop little angle, which is going to make the foot feel much more natural than just staying perfectly flat no matter where you move it over the ground. Our foot does this. It rolls. So I want to try and push that through the shot here. So pushes off, rolls back, and then rolls forward. So something like that. It's not much, but it gives a nice level of polish on there. Along with that slide there. Now that foot feels much more organic. That's one step. Now we've got all the others. So I'm not going to do this whole thing just on the feet. Like, this is not a let's finish this, polish this up. This is more just like, how do we fix certain elements? So if anyone wants to see me actually finish it, just let me know. We can do a stream on that. It is mostly going to be more of the same kind of thing. So let's actually, I'm going to turn off, I've closed off my layer manager. I need to turn that off. So we track the feet, improve that push off right there. We do need to improve this one. So let's actually, it's really just this frame right here. So let's take that frame. In moments like these, a very quick and simple fix is just put two keys. This is, you could call this the wall off method. Essentially, you put a key at the start of where things work, put a key where things start to work again, and fix the middle. In this case, I know frame 21 works pretty well. Set a key. Frame 23 works pretty well. Make sure I set a key on everything. 22 is the one frame that's not working. So now I can just take this, boop, move it into place, make sure the foot doesn't slide back. Done. So I didn't have to worry about curves or anything like that. I just made sure the key before was good, the key after was good, and then fix that one frame, and I'm done. Now from there, if I'm polishing this up, I can go into my graph editor and start to clean up my curves and whatnot. But for the most part, that is now complete. And Tara, thank you so much for the reminder, and hope you're doing well, by the way. Let's see. Now, if anyone, like, we're just kind of going through this randomly here. If anyone has other questions or things they'd like me to do, let me know. We can always do that. Now here, let's actually add that little slide in again, just super quickly. I'm going to raise this up, bring this back a little bit, and you'll notice that that's keeping the leg a little too bent all the time. So I don't really want to do that. I don't want to lose the nice straight pose that I already have in the leg there. So it's going to reach forward here. And then what I'm going to do is just take my translate Z in the graph editor. And for that entire hold here, I'm just going to nudge it forward. Just a little bit. Now it contacts there, slides, and then let's actually take this key, move it over, and nudge it a little bit more. Now I get 2 frames of sliding right there, very subtle. Right there. I love those little slides. They really help. You can see it from the side view, and slide in. They help to avoid feet feeling boring and just gluey, where they just hit the ground and then they stick there. I almost feel like this needs to be pushed a little bit more. Okay, so we can keep going on the feet, but it's more of the same, more of the same. So let's actually focus on a bigger problem. And this is something that we talked about earlier, but it's a very important aspect of animating these shots, is what happens when you get a boring pose. So we pose things out, we follow our reference, and let's find, I try to remember which one we talked about in the reference. I think it was this one. This pose is not interesting. It really isn't. The line of action is kind of boring. The legs are boring. The arms are boring. It's just boring. And this happens when you're animating. You're going to be working on your shot, and either maybe a pose that you did ends up being not as interesting, or more likely, an in-between isn't as interesting. So right here, this was a breakdown that we had done, and it's just kind of bleh. So what do we do? Well, this is where you go back to your posing fundamentals. How can we make this visually more interesting? The only thing that's tricky here is that not only do we have to make this more interesting, but we can't break the spacing and the motion that's happening around it. That's where things get really tricky. So there's a few different ways you can kind of push this and make it a little easier on yourself. One thing I like to do is to draw out the poses before and after. Now there's a BH Ghost tool, which is great for this. Maya does have its ghosting editor, which you could technically use for this, but I haven't had super good luck with it. Let's actually see if it'll work. So for the ghosting editor, essentially what you do is you select geometry. So I'll make sure I can select the body here. Let's just select the body. We won't select anything else, just as a test. And you would add the selected geometry in here. So where is the add button? I forget where it is. I think you middle mouse drag it in. Ghost objects. I haven't, yeah, create ghost from selection, duh. So you add that in, and then you should see the ghosting. Now, you're probably not, we're not going to see it here because I haven't gotten it to work with certain rigs yet. It works simply, like with just basic geometry, it works great. So let's actually do that. So let's unghost selected here and just quickly create a cube. I do love this new menu, by the way. It's really cool. So we're going to take this cube and we're just going to animate it going forward here. Boop. Now I can just go in here, create ghost from selection. There we go. We see the ghosting. That's really nice. You can see it auto updates. So if we move this quite a bit here, we see the ghost images. It's really cool. But unfortunately, I haven't gotten it to work with certain rigs yet. Some rigs it works great. Other rigs, just because of the way they're rigged, it doesn't pull the information through. So here, we're not going to get anything, unfortunately. So since we can't use that, you could try to use BH Ghost tool, which is a tool that I used to use quite often. And essentially it does the same thing, but it takes a screenshot, you could say, of your pose and just saves it there. So it's I guess you could say a little bit more of a rudimentary or manual ghosting tool. Very nice. But the other thing you can do is use your grease pencil tool. And essentially think of it like as if you were in Sync Sketch and you were trying to analyze your pose in there. So I can bring in my grease pencil tool. This is what I use all the time. It's also nice and simple because you can also draw using it. Oops, not that. Toolbox, that's the one I'm looking for. Okay, so on this frame, we've got this pose here. And you don't have to draw this super accurately. I usually just kind of do a rough outline of the pose. So we've got this pose here. It's okay. It could definitely use a plussing pass, especially on this leg right here. That leg is just perfectly straight. Blech, boring. But that's not the pose we're focused on just yet. We've got that pose there. We are trying to fix pose 20. But we've also got this pose here that, let's say, is good. Good enough. We'll put it that way. That leg is still boring. Look at that boring straight leg. With that, we've got our two poses drawn out. I can now go through here and see. I wonder if I can enable the override there. Doesn't look like it did anything. Ah, I was hoping it would. So we can come in here now and essentially use this as a way of trying to figure out our next pose without just guessing and potentially ruining things. Now what I like to do is I'll just turn off polygons. So I just have this. And and that green definitely does not show up. Let's make that a really bright green. Super bright. And then bright red. And let's also change our background color in Maya. So you can do this by just hitting Alt-B in Maya. And there we go. Now we can see that much more clearly. And let's go full screen there. So what I can do now is essentially try to break down this shot and think of how I can push that pose without the intrusion of the old one. Or if I did want to bring it back, I believe the shortcut is Alt-2. Yeah. I can just bring that back and compare. So right now the spine is too straight. This leg is boring. This leg is boring. Ugh, not interesting. So let's actually look at the motion, make sure we understand what we're animating. This is something that seems common knowledge, but I see a lot of people miss out on it, and I used to do this as well a lot. Is the character going up or down? What are they doing in this motion? Which way are they rotating? Just scrub through. So he's going up, and then he's coming back down right there. So we now know our basic motion. He's coming through right here. Okay. So we are adjusting pose. Let's go with pose 20. I should have actually drawn this one out. Let's actually do that super quick. Now the reason why is spacing wise it's going to make more sense. So let's do pose 18 instead here. Whenever I'm thinking of my breakdowns when I have to draw them, just because I'm not the greatest artist, I don't draw super well, I like to make sure that I am breaking things down on twos. So try to avoid, at least for me, I try to avoid having something on threes or ones or things like that, or uneven spacing. Ones is actually okay. It's mostly threes and fives, things like that. Okay, there we go. That's our in between. So we have the character pushing off the ground here and then coming in for a landing. And they're straightening up right there. Well, how can we make that more interesting? Let's see. There's a few different ways you can do this. If you're really good at drawing, you can just draw it in. Like I said, I'm not great at drawing poses. So what I like to do is break things down in just thinking of spacing and elements of the shot. So for example, we have the hips that go from here to here. We have the head that goes from here to here. We have the chest, and I'm just doing small circles so it's easier to see. It goes from here to here. Now, the problem is our breakdown is just making everything kind of go up very linearly. That's not interesting. Essentially, what we're getting is this, this, and this, where everything is just right in the middle. That's not fun. So I want to push this in a way that we're getting different arcs in things. Instead of everything going, I want to have maybe one part go like this, the next part like that, the next maybe like this. Now everything's got a different arc. I want to push the spacing. Maybe the hips are going much faster, whereas the body, maybe it drags back a little bit. Try to think of it in those simple terms. We're just thinking of these spheres and how to make them varied. Now we can get to the legs afterwards. Let's just focus on the body. So for the hips I actually don't have too much range with, mostly because the character is pushing themselves forward And it's a very reserved run. So what I mean by that is not bouncing up and down. The character is just going in a linear line, which means that I can't really break off too far from that arc right there. I also can't push my spacing too far because the character is in a run, which is a linear motion. I can't do this where the speeding up, slowing down, speeding up, slowing down. That's not going to be fun. So the hips, I might have to just leave right there in the center. Kind of boring, but we kind of have to do it. And let's actually do this in a different color so we can see. Let's see what color is going to show up. Yellow would show up. Yeah, I guess yellow is going to be the most contrasting for now. Okay. So it's our golden pose. So we can maybe push that up a little bit. So it's still kind of got an arc, but it's linear. Now, we've got that. That doesn't mean that the chest has to do the same thing. The chest can be a little different. Now, in this case, as he's getting up, what I want is the feeling of him like he's curved in, and instead of just going whoop, straight up, I want the feeling of that unrolling motion of the spine. So I'm going to try and lead with the chest and push the curve of the chest here. So as he's coming through, the chest is probably going to be easing in and kind of straightening up there. So let's try to push it a little bit more this way. So you can see it's easing in right through there. Now, this might change. This is just testing things out. This is what I love about this method, is you can test things out very quickly and not have to worry about breaking something. Now the head, what's the head going to do? Well, it's going to drag down. It's going to go up, but hold. So it's going to be pushed forward because the chest is a little bit more forward, but I can have it be just like slightly higher than that one. I could even drag it down if I wanted to. Like it arcs this way. But I think that would kind of be a little strange, mostly because it'll make the character feel like he's doing some sort of dipping motion with the head. So I think it could raise a little bit, but it's going to have a much higher upwards motion here. The big thing I don't want is the head to go this far, where it has to go back, because that's going to ruin my arcs in the run. So once I have this, let's pick a different color again. We'll go pink. I'm just going for really bright colors here. Once we have that, I can start to think of the pose itself and try to draw it in a little bit. Again, you don't have to be amazing at drawing for this, but I'm just trying to think of my line of action. My previous line was kind of curved this way. The next line is kind of curved the other way. Very slightly, very slightly. So I want this to kind of be straight on the back, but curved on the shoulder area. So the character is a little bit more like this. Straightening up, but the chest and head are dragging through. The head would be somewhere along here. Dragging through. Shoulders would be quite high already. Something like that. I'm not going to worry about the arms or anything like that. Those I can just push the spacing of. But the legs, I definitely want to make sure I get a much more interesting pose. If we think back on what we had before, so you can see the head's going to be much lower here and the body is still going to be curved. My proportions suck, but I'm just getting the idea of it. Right now the legs are boring. Ugh, just not interesting to look at. So how can I push this? How can I push these leg poses to be more interesting? Well, the passing leg look back our pose right now, it's going through like that. I could have this go through, maybe not quite so steep, and essentially just drag it back a little bit. So something like this, maybe a little lower as well. So it keeps that nice flow right through there. Versus this, where it's going so high and we're getting that 90-degree bend right through there. Or I could even, for that, go even higher, depends on how exaggerated I want this run to be, and drag this back. So you can tweak a lot of different things very quickly with this and try different variations. I think I want this to be a little lower. This character is not doing a big, like, stompy run. It's just a quick change of position. Now for the other leg, I'm not gonna have too many choices here, but I can still draw out what I would like to have, which is an angle to the foot like that, where it still feels like the character is pushing up and forward right there. So that's my ideal. That's what I would like. So where the hips are spacing wise in the center, the chest spacing wise is leading, and the head spacing wise is technically kind of more to the center, but still leading a little bit more. So we get something like that. So each one is just a little different and more interesting. And hopefully our pose is going to be a little bit more dynamic as well. So let's bring that back. And now what we can do is essentially match the pose as much as we can. And we could try to change the hip height as well. That would mean affecting the whole range here and raising the hips throughout this whole section. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. It really depends on what we want to go for on this walk and run. So let's just quickly make some adjustments. I'm going to bring this foot down a little bit more here. Yeah, it needs to go down. Otherwise, it doesn't look like he's actually pushing off the ground there. So that's going to have to come down. We might raise the hips up. We'll see. This foot, easy enough. Bring it back. Something like that. You can see my drawings did not match up much at all, but that's fine. The body, as it's coming through, I'm going to try and bend the body forward a little bit more. Let the hips raise up. This is also where the graph editor comes in really handy, because you can see your pose changes and make sure that they're not breaking things and that you're not like going too far out of the way. So something like that. So we feel the hips rotating. The spine starts to come up a little bit and then pops up. The head, let's keep that a little lower. Get that drag in there. Okay. So that's a little better already. Now, keep in mind, we're just doing the breakdown. Ideally, like, this would have taken more time, but ideally what we would have done is also push the poses before and after as well. So, for example, this pose, we can push quite a bit more. If we want this pose to be a really exaggerated C shape, just crunch him down. So now we get that nice exaggerated curve in there. And that's going to allow us to curve more here as well. I think I'm actually fine with that, so. Let's actually not have that neck go so far forward here. But with that, let's actually also push this leg. Like I said, I'm not a fan of that weird, just 90-degree bend in here. So I'm going to try and push this to be a little bit more dynamic. There we go. So, does this make our poses hugely better? Well, not really. We didn't push them that much. But it's definitely more interesting than they were before. I also need to push the twist in the body here. The hips are not where they should be. But now we have a more dynamic change in this posing here. Now the spine is a little too far bent here, so I'm going to start straightening that up here. So now we feel that spine straightening before the head goes up. There we go. So with that, we have a more dynamic breakdown. And that's one way you can do it. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. Now I also have to double check here because the head is bouncing weirdly. There we go. Still not perfect, but for now we're gonna say we'll imagine it's perfect. So from there, we get something more dynamic. We could even push it even more by shaping the pose. When you're doing a pose pass, it's okay to start really exaggerating things. So for example, not that, don't break his spine, but I could push that bend in the back just a little bit more here. So we feel that a little bit more of a curve right through there. Let's see. Oh, there's a good question. In terms of good rigging resources or courses, Gobelin, is Gnomon. Gnomon has some good courses. I've taken a few of their I've taken a few of their courses and they're really good. There's also, I believe, I don't know if they have it, but Flipped Normals has some really good courses. You can check them out. Who else has a good rigging course? Those are the two that come to mind right off the bat. I would check those out and see if those match what you're looking for. Rigging Dojo, there you go. That's probably one of the better ones to look for because it's got rigging in the name. So that would be worth checking as well. Let's reduce that foot roll right here. There you go. So I think that definitely makes that feel a little better, a little stronger. At this point, it would just be pushing our curves. So making sure our graph editor makes sense and weird things aren't happening. So for example, the rotate X right here, he's curving in. But does that make sense? Does that make sense that the character would curve in so quickly right there? Essentially, when we curve in, it's when we take the weight of an impact. So he's bending back. You can see here, bending back. And then suddenly just crunches in. As he's leaning forward here, I almost feel like he would start to lean in a little bit more. So as he's coming through here, instead of bending back, he should almost start keep leaning forward right through there. So he kind of leans, tilts, and then when he lands, leans again. And we don't have a reversal there. So we don't get that wiggle that was happening before. Now he comes through here, hits that down pose, goes to straighten out, and then we curve again. Is that okay? Well, he is taking an impact, so he would kind of crunch in a little bit, but this is something I always look for, is look at your peaks. See how these are almost the same level right there, which means that he's crunching in to a certain level, going out, and then going back exactly to that same level. I do not like that in my shots. It tends to lead to things that feel mechanical or boring. So instead, I try to build up a range. So one thing is going to be much bigger than the rest. So for example, here, if I wanted this to be the biggest point, I would push that to be a little higher, this to be a little lower, like that. So we have a range of motion through there. Now in this case, I don't know if that's the way I would want to go. Maybe I would bring this down a little bit, so we kind of build up in intensity. This kind of feels like it's bouncing out, so I might ease that a little bit. This one, it's okay to go a little faster because it's the impact frame. So he's hitting his foot here, and then his body crunches in. So think of it like a bouncing ball, essentially. I need to double check my rotation in the hips. Something's going on there. And then here, this is very linear, so I would definitely want to exaggerate this. I think I can hold it a little longer. Let his hips lead the action, and then his back straightens to keep him balanced. But I almost feel like he's over straightening too soon here. Let's try to keep his body a little bit more bent right there. And Tiki, hey, bonjour, ça va bien? It's been a while. Hope you're doing well. Bonjour. And thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate it. So what I'm doing here is I'm essentially delaying the straightening of the spine. So instead of just going and then sliding forward, he keeps straightening for a longer period of time. And I can even push it maybe just a little bit more right there. So we just get that continual straightening. As his hips go forward, his back keeps bending, bending, bending. Maybe even like so. Essentially creating a moving hold right there. So we feel that weight shift and that slight bend in the spine coming through the whole time. And I'm just watching the hips, watching the spine, see how they connect together. Do I feel like that feels natural, the way he's moving there? And definitely more natural than before. You can see how the old curve used to be. Again, I love buffer curves. It makes analyzing your animation and comparing very nice. And you can start getting a better understanding of your curves this way as well. Now, one thing here is there's a lot of elements, like I'm just kind of bouncing here and there. This is not a proper cleanup pass. I will say that right now. If this was a proper cleanup pass, I'd have a list of things to do. I wouldn't be jumping back and forth. So for example, we haven't finished animating the feet properly. So the feet are messing things up, adding knee pops and wiggles throughout. So we would definitely need to exaggerate those before doing any like spine stuff. I'd also want to make sure I do a hip pass where I make sure my hip rotations are working correctly. Otherwise, everything's going to screw up again. So really be conscious when you are polishing a shot that you are doing it in a clean, effective way and not random like I'm doing. A lot of work recently. I'm working night and day to deliver my animation at time. Oh, nice. Not nice that you're working night and day, but nice that you're getting to work on some animation stuff. That's awesome. Hopefully you're able to get some rest soon and it doesn't go too much longer on a crazy schedule. Long schedules like that are so tiring. This foot is really bothering me. It contacts so slow. Like it moves so quickly right there and then just eases in. But we already covered feet, so I'm not gonna do it. I just can't look at it. Avert my eyes. Let's actually do a hip pass here on the rotations. Specifically the rotate X. There's something in the rotate X right through here that feels very bland. So the rotate X here at the beginning is going to lean forward. It's tipping the whole body forward. Then as the body kind of catches up here, it's going to start leaning back, straightening. But then here, I feel like by the time I get to this pose that those hips just aren't working right. I almost want to push them further. Like the problem is if you look at the hips, they feel very vertical. And it creates this weird posing where the leg and the hips don't really match up well. If I push these further back, we get a smoother line right through there. It also makes things more dynamic because the hips move more. Anytime you can move things more, you're going to have a bigger dynamic range. So I'm going to just try. Just see what I can do. It's going to throw the spine totally out of whack here, but we can always adjust that. Now here, this is an area where we're going to have to be a little bit more careful with, because we don't want any just kind of quick spins of the hips. If we do that, at least in a run like this, it's going to make the character feel like they are totally out of balance. Let's see, I wonder if by this point, let's lead the hips back a little bit more. This is also where drawings like this can come in really handy, because now I can see where I used to have the body. So for example, right there, frame 18, we're actually pretty much in the same position that we were before. I'm looking at the head pose. Frame 20, we're way off. Frame 22, we're way off. Now, is that a bad thing that we're way off? Not necessarily, but we do get a weird spacing jump right here, where suddenly the head kind of zooms forward. So we will definitely want to look at the spine here. But before I do that, I'm looking at the hips, making sure those are doing what I want. And I think maybe as he impacts here, to help sell the impact, let's have that be when the hips really kind of crank forward there. Or I should say crank backwards. So let's, just as a test, it goes forward, 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 and then whoop, it keeps going through there. I like that more. Now it creates a connected feeling in that motion. We could even ease that in just a little bit. Right there. So he contacts the ground, and then the contact with the ground is what's causing the hips to rotate. like that. Again, I'm just watching the hips, not watching the rest of the body yet. Now with that, the spine is all messed up. This would be the ideal moment for like an IK spine, which we were talking about at the beginning of the stream. You'd be able to just animate the hip, do whatever you want, and then the rest of the spine kind of works with you. You don't have to readjust it. But as we don't have that, we're just going to have to make do. So I'm just watching the spacing of the head. Frame 20 is good. 22 is pretty good. But then here, the head kind of slows down. So I'm going to have to counter animate the head, or sorry, the spine forward here. And there's a few different ways you can do that. So one of my favorites, so we'll do it this way, is just draw out your spacing. And there we go. Let's zoom into the head here. Now, I wonder how you animate the feet taking off. Do you sculpt the poses? No, usually I just use all the foot controls. We actually did that just a little bit earlier, where we were animating the foot taking off and landing, and just going through and really thinking of how it would slide, how it would push off, which side. Oh, and there goes my camera. Right at the... Man, my camera hasn't been lasting very long for some reason. The battery just keeps dying. Weird. There you go. I don't know how long it'll last, but we think of how we want to push all those extra rotations. The rotation of the foot going through. Feet don't just kind of slide. They rotate in all sorts of different ways. Push off the big toe, land on the outer edge, twist and bend. So you can just use the main foot controls for most rigs, and you'd get really good results with that. So for the head here, I'm just going to go, let's go from frame 18. And I'm just going to go every 2 frames and track my spacing. Right there. And you can easily see where the problem area is. If we have enough time, I can do another foot pass so you can see it. I'm not sure how much time. I have about 7 more minutes before I kind of have to prep to get going. So we can easily see here, the spacing issue is right there. So let's fix it. And actually, I'm just going to make sure I can see all of our spacing right there before and after. So it's right here on frame 24. So let's go in here and put it where it should be. It should be probably around here. It's okay that it slows down. That's not a bad thing. We just don't want it to pause and then pop again. So it should be right around here. Easing out from here. And Djibouti, thank you so much for the sub. And actually, Hyper's animation, thank you so much for the gift. Oh, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And Djibouti, welcome to the subs. Hope you enjoy it here. Thank you so much, HyperRez. That's awesome. So I just want to ease that motion out here just a little bit. So instead of feeling like it pauses and then jumps forward, we just get a slow down, nothing more. So like right around here. Slower and then faster. I could even push this one a little bit more forward if I wanted to. So let's go here. I could take this and oh geez, Jack, thank you so much for all the gifts. Oh god, thank you so much. Jeez, you guys are super generous. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And welcome everyone to the subs. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much. Yeah, now I get to listen to my favorite song. So let's say we want to fix both frames in the middle here. Not just the one, we want to adjust both. Well, wait for the song. There you go. There. So we just take those out and just think of it like a spacing chart. I need to put some breakdowns in here. Well, I can just break it down evenly like that, or I could ease in and out. So I could maybe add a little ease right there and then like that. So I'm just adjusting it ever so slightly to clean up that section. And then we get that nice big fast section right through there. Essentially what I'm trying to think of in this section is this part here is like the peak of a bouncing ball. It's going to slow down, but it's not going to stop. And it's going to ease in and out from that point in a nice clean way. So I'm just kind of looking at my spacing, see at what point, okay, that feels pretty good. Let's say, without getting too picky, that's what we want to go with. At this point, I can just take my character back in here, take my spine, because I know I got my hips pretty much where I want them to be. And on these frames, let's see, we were on frame 20. On frame 22 right here, that's about where we want to be. On frame 24, let's set a key and bring that forward. I could also use the neck, by the way, to adjust this. And then from here, we know 26 is good, so let's set a key there and get rid of 25. Actually, let's not get rid of 25 and instead use this to get our spacing exactly where we want it to be, which would be right in the middle-ish. So something like that. Now, is it perfect? No. So you can see here how the neck or the head goes up and then the nose kind of plateaus. Well, we can track that as well. Now I'm just actually watching the chest here, making sure that the spine rotation feels good. Overall, I think it's pretty decent. It almost feels like it freezes right here, which it kind of feels odd, but I think what's causing that? I think it's should be starting to go up here a little bit. Oh, it's the neck, I think. Okay. So let's take a look at the neck. Yeah, well, yeah. Whenever a curve like has a big bounce and then just flattens out like that, you know something's gone wrong. So it's going down here. Let's keep dragging that down. We're gonna have to readjust our spacing overall. Then, well, you know what? The neck should be pretty simple. The neck doesn't do a lot of bouncing. So let's just do this. Delete that. Done. Usually the neck is pretty simple. So now it comes up and eases there. And now we're not getting that weird like plateau bounce on the nose. There's a little pause right there, but we can fix that with the overlap of the head. There's still a little slowdown and speed up here. So I could go back to my chest controls right there. And essentially the character just needs to be a little bit more forward here. Too far forward. right through there. Zoom in there and just get that nice fine tuning. So something like that. It slows down, but it doesn't pause now. So if we kind of look at this from out here, we get that slowdown. We feel those hips rotating. You can see right in here. See how that feels much more alive now, where the hips kind of have that swoop in, whereas the rest of the body kind of holds back, instead of the whole thing just kind of raising up evenly. Let's actually... Do I have the Bold Play Blast here? Yeah, so Bold Play Blast, let's turn off the annotations. Don't need to see all those. If you look at this section right here, look at the hips and the spine. See how they're very stiff right here, very straight, just straight line. Oops, I didn't want to turn that back on. Oops. Okay, so very straight. And then the hips and the spine just kind of go, and then stay in line. So it's just straight, bend, or sorry, rotate, straight. It's boring. It doesn't feel organic. It just feels stiff and toy-like. It's essentially taking a character like this, a little toy, and going, zip, zip. That's it. So I broke up that motion. I had the hips rotate in first because of the impact, not just randomly. Because of the impact, that's the key here. This is what makes it feel like it's tied in with what the legs are doing. Then from there, I offset the spine. So what we're getting now, and you can see my curve is not beautiful, but my animation works. That's the key. Another key here is sometimes your curves are not going to look good in the graph editor, as long as you understand why. You're not just, again, throwing things in and hoping for the best. But if we look at the hips now, see how as they impact, we get that big rotation of the hips as the spine and upper chest almost stay still. And then that carries the weight through. But at no point does the head freeze and just sit in place. You've still got that forward momentum. We've also, and there goes my camera again. No. We've also got the, let me just see if I can turn it back on again. What was I saying? We've got that connection between hips and chest. The head is continuing forward. The connection to the legs feels better. We're just tying everything together. And this to me is the difference between the spline phase to the refining phase. It's not, there you go, hey. It's not just a matter of putting more keys and breakdown's done. It's connecting everything. Because when we go into splines, there's a lot of things that we might have done improperly in step mode that we didn't really realize, or ways that we can exaggerate those connections. So it comes down to like that foot motion here, how we pushed that spacing and tied everything together so it pushes off nice and cleanly. And then we have this separation from the hips coming down and the foot coming down. So you feel that little bit of a stretch where the leg is bent and then stretching versus just moving them together. They are still connected, but they don't feel like they are so connected that they're just tied together. We get a little bit more of a lean in here. The body, you can feel it starting to tilt over to shift the weight across. The hips swoop through. It's all little things. But by connecting it, it avoids this, like that foot right there, just kind of wiggling around, doing nothing, which means that if it's wiggling around like that, there's no forward momentum. The character is just, it's essentially, they're lifting their foot and doing this. I was like, that's not right. As they're pushing forward here, there's no rotation away from camera. They're just kind of, it's too smooth. That foot, see how you can almost imagine a string. It's almost like a string from his hips to his ankle here. And as he's moving, it just stays perfectly in line there up until he hits. And then what that makes is the down pose has no visual contrast because his knee is bent and then same bend. So we're not getting that nice visual dynamic change. Then as he goes up here, that's the biggest one here. It feels stiff. So boring. So this is all stuff that I like to try and do when I'm going into this refining phase. It's approaching things from a list first. You want to have a list, that way you're not just jumping randomly from one thing to the next. You kind of saw I did that here, where I fixed the spine first, and then I went to the hips, and then I had to fix the spine again. In my case, it kind of worked out because I cleaned up the spine, and then I could use that cleaned up animation to refine a few other things. But ideally, I should have fixed the hips first, get that nice clean motion of the hips and connecting them with the legs. And then from there, I'd fix the spine. So it would have saved me some time, essentially. So start with a list and then try to exaggerate your posing. Look for poses that are not interesting. So where was it? Frame 20, I believe. Let's actually compare. So frame 20 over here. You can see it's not a huge difference, but that leg, more interesting. The body, look at how boring that is. When you kind of compare it, it is so much more boring now. Compared to having that little bit of a bend there. Now, it's not ideal. We didn't pose out the arms. There's definitely stuff I would do with the arms there. But that leg, now he feels more dynamic, like he's pushing through. This leg doesn't have that horrible, perfectly straight line there. It's not ideal. I would want to push it more, honestly. So I would push the hips up or over to get an angle there. But it's better. So push your poses. Then push your spacing. Track your spacing, whether you're using arc tracker or a grease pencil or whatever. Track your arcs and improve them. Improve your spacing. Connect things together. Make things feel like when they are moving, the weight of the arm swinging through is going to cause that extra little bit of rotation on the chest. Not just the chest rotating and then the arm moving randomly underneath it. You connect everything in different ways. And that makes your spacing more dynamic. It also makes your whole animation feel more organic, where everything just feels more alive and interesting. And you're not just getting random things that are moving with no connection to each other. And at that point, it's just motion. It's not living. And we can definitely play it from the front view here. It's going to look weird because there's definitely some pops that I did not fix. I need to definitely play. Yeah, so you can see right there, wiggle right through there. Yeah, this part here, he kind of hits a wall right there. If you watch the head, he kind of comes through to the right, and then stops, and then goes to the right again. So this would be an area where I need to adjust, I'm assuming, my spine rotations, because the hips look like they're rotating correctly through there. So I need to track my spine rotations through there. This is an area where I would most likely use the built-in motion trails. So create editable motion trail here and just clean this up with this tool. The reason for this, instead of using the pen, is it's a long span of time, so I'd have to draw out a lot of dots. It's also movement that's kind of going forward, and it's not really movement that we see from the shot camera. So I don't have to worry about getting the exact perfect arcs that I want. I just need to make sure that I am getting a good, interesting, beautiful motion that's not wiggling. Now, one thing I would do here is it's much easier to see the arc from the top. So I would change my layout here to 2 panes, split right, like that. And then I would just switch this to my orthographic top view. And if ever you need to rotate the top view or any of the views, select the camera, and I'm just going to take some rotate Y. So switch that negative 90 like that. So now I can see that curve right from the top, watch my character from the front, and watch my character from the shot cam, because it's always important to look at your camera from the shot camera. It's interesting to see how by working on a fixed camera you can achieve a good looking result while it would require fixing on other angles. That's the big thing, is the most important view is our shot camera. If you're low on time, this view doesn't matter. This really doesn't. If my side to side is a little wonky, but the audience will never see it here, I'm good. Ideally, I wouldn't want that, but if I'm low on time, that is not my priority. So it's a balance that we are working with a lot of the time. We are trying to optimize our time, but also not get caught on little details, while also not just forgetting and just going, those views don't matter, let's just hide them completely and not look at them at all. I like to look at all the cameras all at the same time. So let's see, it still happens to me when you're trying to fix something but you're not sure what you could fix and you end up creating more mess. Oh wait, that was for, sometimes I feel as though the more I try to polish my animations, the more I feel I screw up my animations. That is very common, and oftentimes it's that you just there's two things that happen. There's one that, yes, you screwed up. Sometimes we're polishing things and we're over polishing, we're smoothing things out, we're taking out all the life from the shot and just kind of dulling it down, or like essentially going in the wrong direction. I do that all the time. I actually did that here in a few cases where I fixed something and then I got extra wiggles in the nose and whatnot. So you have to be careful of that. But then the other part is oftentimes there is a back and forth where for example, I fixed the hips, it totally screwed up my spine. So then I fixed my spine. You might fix certain things and it'll break something else. And that's part of the process of polish and refining. We are rebuilding certain things, and sometimes you have to go back into a blocking mode. Like I went back into a breakdown mode for the pose on 20 where I redrew everything there. And that's fine. The big thing is don't be afraid of undoing too. That's why I use buffer curves. If I do a big change and it's like I screwed everything up completely, put it back, start again, and think through, why am I doing this? If you did something and it didn't get better, maybe that's the reasoning you have behind doing that change in the first place is incorrect, or you do something else. Give yourself reasons. Don't just move things randomly. That helps a lot. When I was first starting out, I would just go into the polish mode, which meant smoothing out my curves, making them absolutely perfect. Like this here, I would just smooth that out because, oh, look at that. That's terrible. Delete. Much better. Yeah, but watch the head now. Is it better? Mm-mm. Sometimes you need that little dirt in there. So you're thinking through, why are you doing this? What reasons do we have to push this element at this moment? So hopefully that helps. And the big thing is when you think of those, it helps you learn more. I tend to put too much dirt. That can happen too. I've had shots, especially VFX shots, where characters were a little too jiggly. It was a little weird. Speaking of angles, did you see the tool that I shared on the AM Discord? Ooh, I don't think I had a chance to see it yet. Or wait, no wait. Was that the... Let me open up the Discord here. I saw a tool this morning, but I didn't have a chance to actually dive in. Was that on the resources page? Yeah, I'm not sure which page it's on. Tips and tricks? No. I'll have to look for it again. But I saw something and it looked really cool. The off-topic question: do you recommend saving our files on 2 hard drives in case one breaks, or online storage? I personally use online storage. I have an animation pipeline that I use, so I'll save everything on there. I also do have multiple hard drives. I have 11 hard drives on my computer, so I've got backups on there too. I personally like online storage just because if my house burns down, knock on wood, something happens, electrical strike fries my computer, which has happened twice in the past. So I'm very leery about electrical power outages, things like that. I like to have that online backup because then I can access it from anywhere. If my computer just blows up for some reason, I've got the files still, especially my work files. Personal files, like just my own stuff, I'll have a backup just on a couple of hard drives. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question. Let's see. Now let's actually just do a quick fix on this top view here since we kind of set it up. So I'm going to fix the hips first. And there's a few different ways you can kind of track your hips. The easiest way is to just track an arc just above it, or sorry, a control just above it. So let's take a look at our hips first. Delete that curve and make sure our hips are actually rotating correctly. I know where that drive is. Drive J. Yeah, I've got Drive J. I've got that. See, I have technically with a I've got another plugin here. I have up to Drive R right now. So I've got lots of drives. But actual hard drives, I have up to Drive N. So, yay! Too many. So I just tracked the arc of the lower spine here. This is going to give me the best representation of what the cog is doing here. So this will allow me to very quickly make sure I'm not getting any weird wiggles or bumps in my curve that are stemming from the hips. This is very important. When you're fixing the spine and you want to fix the overlap, it's important to make sure that you don't actually have any random like pops or wiggles that are being generated from another part of the animation. Because if you do, well, you're just trying to solve an issue that is being caught. Like I'm trying to use the spine to solve an issue that's being caused by another part of the body. I'm not actually fixing anything. So I'm going to very quickly just do a pass on my arcs here. Make sure everything is working. If your trail doesn't update, just delete it and then make it again. Doesn't take long. Okay. I'm getting a little bit of a wiggle right here. Now, to make sure that it's not the translation that's causing the issue, let's actually track that arc. And you'll notice that I have two arcs here, but it's hard to see which one's which. What you can do is change the colors of the arc. So open up the attribute editor, and let's say this is the hips. We're going to go really horrible with this, green and pink. That's going to be easy to see. There we go. So now we can see the green and pink line is the translation of the hips. And overall, that feels nice and clean. So that tells me that this little wiggle here that we're seeing on frame 25 is caused by the rotation of the hips. Rotate Z right there. So now I can push this and try to clean that up there. Another way to auto update the trail is to just move it and then, so just translate it and then undo. That'll update the trail for you. So as the hips come through here, we're pushing this quite a bit more. So rounding that out, and oh, my camera just died. Not sure when that happened. Let me actually just turn it off for a second. Let the battery replenish. I wonder what it'll do when you get more than 26. I think it goes to like AA and then AB or something like that. I do have a UPS now, an uninterrupted power supply. I actually have multiple across my house. I even have a UPS for the whole house. It's a surge protector for the entire household, which is really nice. It definitely helps save a lot of worry because I've got a lot of electronics. When you work freelance and your studio is basically your home, you want to make sure you protect your equipment. Is there a way to have two motion trails visible? They disappear when I deselect the controller. Okay, so if you're selecting a controller and the trail disappears, it is most likely because... where is the attribute here? Draw mode is set to when selected. Make sure it's set to always, right there. That should do it. And when you create, let's see, visualize, create a motion trail. Yeah, make sure this is probably selected right now. Set it to always draw, then go to edit, save settings. Now, whenever you create a motion trail, it should always be visible even if you deselect things. So right there. Okay, I'm cleaning that up. I think it's getting pretty clean. I can always also just turn off all this extra stuff. NURB surfaces, let's turn off our grid and just look at the trails from the top view, because I don't really need to see what the head is doing here. I just need to see the trail. And we're still getting a little bit of a wiggle here, which makes me think I've got an issue with my rotate Y or rotate X. Yeah, that could do it. So I want that to slow down there. Go faster here. Let's ease, let's ease the spacing here a little bit more. And then just ease that just a little bit more. Soften that out a bit more. Then rotate Y. It gets a weird speed up right here, which doesn't really make sense, honestly. I'm going to simplify this. Make it nice and simple. This curve here, you can see how wiggly it is. There's a reason for it. It's the impact of the leg to the ground. So that is okay. There's a reason for that curve wiggle. This curve, it's just the leg coming forward. There's really no reason why it should have a pop or a wiggle in there. And look at that, it fixed the curve. So it was my rotate Y curve that was causing the issue there. Maybe a little bit of the rotate X. So now that I know that both of these, the translation and the rotation, are good, I can select these, delete. Take my spine here. Well, actually, let's track the base of the neck. That's going to give me the rotation of the entire spine. Since I move the spine as a whole all the time, so all three of them together, I don't have to track each individual spine control. I can just do one massive track right there. So let's go through. We know we did the X already, so I'm not going to change that. We really just need our rotate Y and our rotate Z. The Z is the most likely culprit, as well as some of the Y. Now, another thing I like to do with a trail here, just to kind of see the spacing a little bit more easily, select the trail and switch the trail draw mode to alternating frames. I find that's a little easier to see the way things are shaped. I'm also going to hide my menus there to give myself a little bit more real estate. Usually I would do this with multiple monitors, put some of the windows on other monitors, but just so everyone can see everything. Let's take a look at that this way. So now we've got the body coming through here. And let's clean up our arcs. So looking at the front view, what's going on? So the character goes to the right. This is good. We can see. Actually, instead of alternating frames, let me actually switch this because I want to see at what point along the curve he is. So I'm going to do past future so I can actually see those points. Like the spine again. Okay. It just makes it a little easier. Oh, he's there. And then he stops right here. This curve should look nice and smooth. And this is actually, you could use your grease pencil tool for this. And what I want is this curve. Let's actually, there we go. To do that. So that's the curve that I want. And yeah, that's what I was worried. Oh wait, I'm moving the camera. That's why. Doop-a-doop. Need to use 2D pen and zoom. Okay. Zoom in. Get my nice. I want that. So there we go. Let's see if we can match that approximately. And let's also make sure to show and turn off manipulators so that doesn't get in the way. Okay. So frame 18, that needs to be moved a little bit. Move that over and then update the curve. You just translate something and then undo. That'll update the curve. Unfortunately, rotations don't always update things. So we've got that. Now let's update the key on frame. We've got 14. Let's go on 16. And I'm just going to rotate this. Actually, let's try to fix this here. See how we can see this bump in the Y? Let's fix that first before we start doing any big changes. You never know. That might actually just fix what we have right there. Nope, it brought it further away. That's fine. At least now we know that that bump isn't going to get in the way. It comes through. Let me actually test something here. I'm going to just twist the character in Y. Yeah, that's not really what we want. So let's just take that Z rotation right through here and push that. Oh, too far. Not far enough. Yeah, just a little bit more. Clean that up. And you'll notice that we're still getting that wiggle. Well, how do we solve that? There's a few different ways you can do it. You can try to clean up your curves. You can try to get everything just right. Or you can animate it on ones and just brute force it. Essentially what we're getting here is it looks like some sort of gimbal issue. Where the spine and the hips are not wanting to play well with each other. So I can essentially try to brute force it or adjust some of my other curves, like the Y curve here, and minimize the range of motion, which should hopefully flatten out that curve a little bit. So this is where you kind of have to play a detective in a sense. You have to just play around with your curves, see what is going to be the easiest and best way to do it. And sometimes there unfortunately is no like simple answer to this. It's just kind of getting it as close as you can. Now, as a trick, let's see. Don't want to show this. No, we'll save that for a different time. There's another trick you can do for this, but it's going to be a lot more work. And I don't have time, unfortunately, to show it. So we can start to clean that up. Try to bring this back down a little bit. No, too far. That's going to go the other way that we want. Okay. Comes through. Over. Too far. Right around there. Actually, I think I can pull this back a little bit right here. So I'm just going through, trying to block in the curve. I'm essentially going on 2s and trying to block in the curve manually to get the arc I want. Let's clean that up a little bit more. Now, if you find that you don't have the control you want, make your manipulator a little bit bigger. The further your cursor is away from the pivot point, the more control you're going to have. So if you have to do changes in the viewport, that can help a lot. Okay, so now we've got that. I know what's happening. My rotate Y of the hips is fighting my rotate Y of the chest. I need to push this down a lot more. Okay. Coming through. Now here, we get another big dip and wiggle. So what's happening with the body? Essentially, he's shifting his weight onto his other leg here, and we need to just hold back a little bit. So he holds there, eases in. I'm trying not to look at the head. The head's going to be a little weird right now. And then he's changing direction too quickly right here. So this needs to ease back the other way. So just trying to get this roughly in place. Not perfect, just rough. So something like that. So now, overall, we're pretty close to what we want. You can see much smoother. Is it perfect? No. There's still some fixing that we have to do. But now our curves have given us essentially what we need. And we can use this to figure out any areas that are going to give us issues, like right here. Why is it popping right there? That makes no sense. This should be much smoother. Well, if it's popping there, that must mean that there's something with the hips that are popping or affecting it in some way. Now, since I can't see that here, unless it's something to do with the rotate right there, then I just need to double check that I'm not countering things in a weird way. Let's see how this... Yeah, that's actually better. So yeah, it was just smoothing of the curve. That actually works better now. And then the ending is good. There we go. So we just cleaned up our curves quite a bit there. Much better. Now, you'll notice though that if we look at it from the front view, it's not perfect. You'd think our curve is absolutely beautiful. Yay, we've done it. Look at the face. Notice something? It's wiggling around. Why? Well, we were tracking the base of the neck, not the head. And this is a very common issue I see, where a lot of students will track the base of the neck and kind of assume that that's going to fix everything. But it doesn't. All you're doing is making sure that the neck itself is very nice and stable. If we track that point right there, everything's going to look great. The problem is that the head, being on top of everything, is going to be highly affected by the rotations and movements of the body. So for example, if I take my rotate Y here and rotate it, look at how far that head is swinging from side to side. So what this means is that I need to make sure my rotations actually work correctly. And this can be very tricky to do. So I unfortunately don't have time to go over how to fix that here, but if everyone would like, I can show how to fix that maybe in the next stream. Because it's actually surprisingly easy once you know how to do it. It just means having to reblock certain things, which is a lot easier than it sounds, especially if you have some tips and tricks on how to do it. So if anyone's interested in that, we can go over that, but unfortunately I don't have time today. I actually have to get going in a few minutes here. Do you have the old recording of Zelda spinning shot? I think I do. I'm not sure. A to the J would know actually more than I do. But if it's not up there, I can try to re-upload it. If anyone's interested in seeing that. Let's see if my camera's going to work again. Let's see. So get the camera back. Boop. There we go. Hey, we'll see how long it lasts. But hopefully this was interesting. I know we didn't really technically improve the animation. We improved parts of it, but there's still a lot that needs to be fixed. A lot that, like, this is, I wouldn't call a finished pass on this. It's like we went into splines, we're in the middle of refining, but we haven't actually refined the shot. We're still in the process. But this is one of those elements. Ooh, okay, so there's the date. Perfect. The dates help a lot for me because a lot of the old videos don't have proper name to them, so it's hard to find at times. Perfect. Zelda spin. I'll see if I can re-upload that one. So yeah, and even though this is not a final shot and it's still kind of in pieces, hopefully this makes sense. Hopefully it kind of gives you an idea of how to approach this passive animation and how to kind of improve it. I would want to push this silhouette here. Just I'm getting picky here. I wanted to change it earlier, but I would push that like so we get a nice clean silhouette in the legs. But yeah, hopefully that helps give you ideas of how you can approach that refining process. Like I said, if anyone's interested, I can definitely keep going. We might do that for the next stream. And the process is more complicated than I thought. Yes, the refining process is not just a simple, hey, I'm here, clean up a few curves, done. You're thinking of a lot of the extra mechanics that you can build in, the ways you can connect parts of the body together, have some things lead, have some things drag. Like on this pose here, I feel like his hip is leading too far in rotate Y. It kind of feels like he's like kicking his leg forward. I would want that leg to lead a little bit more. So I would probably tone down the rotate Y on his hips, bring it back screen left just a little bit there. Runs actually don't have a lot of rotate Y in the hips. The hips tend to be a little bit more stiff in there. So it's connecting everything and thinking of how we can push the visual appeal of things. And we haven't even gotten into how we can use bend bows and all of that to help push things as well. So